Hello, good morning, all you lovely people. I am sure you guys are having a great Sunday. Sunday morning, अच्छा breakfast किया होगा. I'm hoping that you are keeping up with the principles of TBBD and starting off your day with a nice breakfast, which of course is not very heavy, but a light breakfast, and then going ahead and then having an early lunch, which is 11-12, and then having a wholesome, nice, substantial lunch. Okay, so what is today's topic? As I had mentioned, I had covered part 1 of millets on Thursday, and I had said that I'll continue the part 2 for millets on Sunday. So I'm going to speak about, of course, millets today. So like I explained to you on Thursday कि millets को हम categorize कर सकते हैं. There are two broad ways in which we can categorize them, and on Thursday I had spoken about how we can categorize millets into heating millets and cooling millets. तो एक हो गया heating millets, एक हो गया cooling millets, and then how you eat them to your advantage, what is the right weather to eat them, and what combinations you can eat them with other kinds of lentils and stuff, and what is the correct way of making them so that you can neutralize the heating effects of the heating millets and eat them throughout the year. So all those kind of topics is something that I had covered on Thursday. And now I want to cover the other aspect of millets, which is कि हम millets को और एक category में divide कर सकते हैं, which is based on how they are produced. So it has an agricultural angle कि उसको किस तरह से उगाया जाता है, grow किया जाता है, how they are produced, and in that sense you can categorize millets into two categories. One is husked grains and the other is naked grains. So if you see, I have already done it here. So there is naked grains mein ragi, jawar, bajra, and husked grains mein you have all these foxtail, little, proso millet, and barnyard millet. So we have these 7 kinds of millets, and this is basically another category in which you can divide them. Abhi kyun hame ye janna hai? Why do we want to know? Because if you get to know how they are produced, kya antar hai, what is the difference between these two categories, you will be able to understand how you can alter the recipes, how you can use them in various different recipes. Basically versatility is something that you will be able to understand very well if you understand this concept. So basically what happens is that millets are grown, as I said, in two different ways. Naked grains का मतलब ये होता है कि ये जो millets हैं, which is ragi, jawar and bajra, in millets में there is no hard husk, there is no hard covering outside these 3 millets जो difficult to digest होते हैं. So basically ये जो millets हैं, they are grown and then they can just be cleaned and they can be used just after cleaning. You don't need any further step of processing them further, and that is why these are just called unhusked grains, or these are just called as naked grains. And in terms of agriculture, you can think of them as wheat. कैसा wheat जिस तरह से grow होता है, somewhere similar you can say that these ragi, jawar, bajra, the naked grains, you can think of them in terms of wheat. When it comes to the husked grains, foxtail, little, proso and barnyard millet, इनके हिंदी नाम क्या है? It's all there in the book. So foxtail is kangani, little millet is kutki, proso millet is barre, and barnyard millet is samaki chawal. So these are the Hindi names, but of course they are regional names, vernacular names in all regions of India, as I mentioned on Thursday as well. So you can go ahead and check the regional vernacular names. Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Bengali, सब में इनके नाम है. So please go ahead and check, and it's quite easy to find out about them. So what I was trying to say is कि ये जो millets हैं, इनमें एक outer covering होता है, एक husk होता है, and ये जो husk होता है, so when they are grown, जब वो उनको harvest किया जाता है, ये husk को निकालना पड़ता है, and only then after that you can eat them. So there is a non-edible outer cover, a hard cover, which is called the husk, which needs to be removed, and once you remove them, only then you can eat them. And this is the process which is similar to rice. This is how rice is also harvested. Rice को harvest करने के बाद there's a whole process of processing it so that the outer covering of that rice is removed, and only then you can eat that rice. So this therefore can be compared to rice. In fact, these millets are actually called millet rice. I had put up a recipe reel on my page on how you can make millet rice, and a lot of people said, "Acha, what is millet rice? We only know about millets, but what is millet rice?" So millet rice is nothing but these four. ये foxtail, little, proso and banyan millet, इनको millet rice ही कहा जाता है technically. If you speak to any agricultural scientist, if you speak to any farmer, they will refer these four millets as millet rice, and the reason is because just like our normal rice, ये भी paddy के तरह इनको उगाया जाता है. This is like the paddy, and then you remove the outer cover through processing like the way we do it to rice, and then you eat. Similar to rice, there is also parboiled variety in them. जैसे rice में कैसा होता है हमारा एक normal variety, एक parboiled variety होता है, parboiled variety. Similarly, in these millets, you will find a parboiled variety also. You want to eat it, you don't want to eat it, that's a completely different question. But then, yes, there is a parboiled variety you will find. So there is a parboiled foxtail millet rice, parboiled barnyard millet rice. So that kind of thing you will not find in jawar, ragi and bajra, and that is where this difference comes. That this is something that you can think of it as rice, and this is something that you can use and think of in terms of wheat, because that is how it is grown. These are naked grains, there is no husk, there is no processing that is required, and these come with husk, and just similar to rice, the paddy requires to be processed, so therefore they are called as millet rice. The other thing is also because ये जो extra एक processing का काम है, इसके वजह से what happened was like a normal rice, जो हम white rice या steamed rice खाते हैं, they have this whole process where the harvesting is done and then the husk is removed and then we eat it. So that was quite in place in terms of agricultural processing methods. But as time went by, धीरे धीरे जैसे जैसे समय बीतता गया, ये millet rice, they couldn't keep up with the pace of rice, they couldn't keep up with the pace of that, कि वो outer cover निकालना है, that process which was there of removing the outer cover, the husk for these grains, and then making them fit for human consumption. That method actually couldn't keep in pace. Rice could keep in pace because probably there was always demand for rice, but इनका शायद demand भी नहीं था उतना, and they couldn't keep in pace. And that is the reason why we see ragi, jawar and bajra as still very popular millets. We know them. If you talk about millets, people probably only know about ragi, jawar and bajra. So ragi, when I say it's nachni, finger millet, jawar is sorghum, and bajra is pearl millet. So 80% of people would know about ragi, jawar and bajra, but they would not know about these millet rice, simply because these were then categorized as major millets, क्योंकि इनको हार्वेस्ट करने के बाद ज़्यादा तकलीफ नहीं थी. There was no work major work which was required to be done once they are harvested, and hence because it was easy to bring them out in the market, they became more popular and major and people know about it. But because these required a little bit of effort after being harvested, it just just because that ease was not there, it couldn't keep in pace, and it was not brought into the forefront, and people don't quite know about these millet rice. So this was one part. The other part is about the recipes. अभी ये जानने से इसमें हमारा what is the benefit? The benefit is this, that when we talk about these millet rice, firstly when you buy them, okay, if you go online or if you go to any organic store or if you go to any store where you feel that you can get millets, you can always ask for millet rice. That is one thing, because when you call millet rice, they will understand that you're talking about any of these four. If at all it happens that you find a foxtail millet packet, packet, there is written as foxtail millet, and now you do not know if it is a rice, if the outer cover has been removed or not. So firstly, 90-95% the outer cover is always removed before it comes into the market. So even if rice is not mentioned, it has to be the rice form. The other thing is, even if they don't mention in the label as foxtail millet rice, for example, you check the usage. They always write on the packet on how you can use them, and there you will see that they will always write that use it like you use rice, use it in biryani, pulao, idli, dosa. So they will always mention that you use it or cook it just the way you cook rice. So there you will understand that this is actually the foxtail millet rice. Why I am bringing this topic is because, as I said, when I discussed millet rice, how to cook millet rice in one of the recipe reels. A lot of people came and said that how do we buy this? We went online and it was written little millet. We don't understand if this is millet or this is millet rice. So what I'm trying to say is, if you find any of these 4 millets in any store, online, offline, 95% it will be the rice form, because they cannot not remove the outer non-edible husk and just pack it and give it to you. Having said that, a rice is always written on the label, whether it will be in the name, foxtail millet rice, barnyard millet rice, or if it is not written in the name, in the title of the packet itself, then it will be mentioned somewhere in the cooking procedure, in the usage procedure. And that is what makes these millets very very useful also, because जितने भी rice के recipes हैं, आपको बिरयानी बनाना है, आपको पुलाव बनाना है, आपको any South Indian dishes like the payasam, we just did one payasam recipe. So any basically recipe where you use the normal white rice, you can simply, without any change in the recipe, you can simply substitute the white rice with any of these rice. आप वो white rice जो भी बना रहे हैं उससे whatever you want, you don't have to alter anything, not even the soaking time. A lot of people have asked me, do we need to soak millets? We read everywhere that you need to soak millets for 6 hours, 8 hours. You don't need to soak millets for 6 hours, 8 hours every time. It depends on the recipe. It depends on the variety of the millet you're choosing. If you're choosing any of these millet rice, you are going to use them in the same way you will use a steamed rice. So if suppose you are making an idli out of any of these things, then of course idli में आप ऐसे भी normal rice जब आप use करते हैं, there is a soaking time which is there 5 or 6 hours. So in the same way you are going to soak them. But if you're just making a normal steamed foxtail millet rice, then you don't have to soak them for 6 hours, because that is not what you will do when you make a normal steamed white rice, for example. So what I'm trying to say is, let's not complicate it. आपका जो भी white rice का recipe है, whatever you want to make out of it, whether it's a kheer or a sevai or whatever you want to make out of it, you can simply start substituting these millet rices with the white steamed rice, and the process, the soaking time, the recipe, everything stays unaltered, exactly same to same. And even with these millets, these millet rice, like even if you go to my book, in my book, if you see, I have purposely given a lot of these recipes which are there, like a lot of these millet recipes, so that people can have a variety in their diet and stuff. So when you go to the recipe section, even there you will see that wherever I have mentioned, say a barnyard millet dosa, for example, I have mentioned that you can substitute or you can exchange the barnyard millet with any of the other millet rice. So even in my book, if there is any recipe of any one particular millet rice, for example, a foxtail millet khichdi, for example. So in that foxtail millet khichdi, you can substitute the foxtail millet with any of the other 3, which is little proso barnyard, and not do any other alteration in the recipe. So the thing is that, because these are all similar in terms of how they are produced, how they work, how they smell, how they, even taste to some extent, they are quite similar. ये चारों को आपस में एक दूसरे के साथ हम alter कर सकते हैं, और इन चारों को आप वो सब रेसिपीज में यूज कर सकते हैं जहां जहां आप नॉर्मल स्टीम्ड व्हाइट राइस यूज करते हैं. आई होप दैट पार्ट इज क्लियर. Now we come to the ragi, jawar and bajra. As I said, ragi, jawar and bajra, because of the way it is produced, you can compare it in terms of recipe. I'm saying you can compare it to wheat. तो इसीलिए, क्योंकि हम wheat में सबसे पहला हमारा क्या होता है, we always love to make wheat rotis, and that is why you will see कि एक रागी का भाकरी, जवार भाकरी, और a बाजरा रोटी, और a रोटला, or a roti, whatever you want to call it in your regional cuisine. But this is why you will see that these 3, इन तीनों का सबसे ज्यादा हमने अगर अभी कभी कुछ खाया है और कभी कुछ सुना है, तो it is always a millet roti. So it's always mostly in form of a roti. Again, like when you go back and see, do we make wheat ka khichdi? We don't make a wheat ka khichdi. We don't make a gehu ka khichdi. So there is that is why even when you make a bajra ka khichdi or when you make a jawar ka khichdi, then we know that either you soak them for longer, because a foxtail millet ka khichdi you will not require to soak the foxtail millet rice for 6 hours just to make a khichdi. क्योंकि आप जैसे मैंने कहा, you will just substitute it with normal white rice, and for normal white rice when you make a khichdi, you don't have to soak it for 6 hours. If you just soak it for 15-20 minutes, it's fine. So when you're making a foxtail millet khichdi, you don't have to soak the foxtail millet or any of these millet rices for any 6 hours or 7 hours. Just 20-30 minutes is fine when you're making a khichdi. But when you go for, say, a bajra khichdi, it will require a longer soaking time, because that is not how we normally use wheat. It has, as I said, it is a naked grain, and for us to use it, the best way to use it is, of course, to make a roti or a bhakri or a rotla. But if you want to make a bajra khichdi, then how we make a porridge out of wheat? We use dalia. So I'm just trying to simplify things so that you can think of recipes and you can come up with more recipes and more versatility. So whenever you think of wheat in terms of a khichdi or porridge, we only know about dalia, which is the cracked wheat in English. So similarly for bajra, then what you should do is, you need to make it, what is a dalia, what is a cracked wheat? It's basically wheat in smaller pieces, tiny bits. So in the same way, you need to dry churn the bajra grain in a mixie so that you break them into smaller parts, and then you will be able to make a khichdi or a porridge with the bajra very easily without wasting 6 hours, 7 hours on it. So if you again go back to my recipe reels, there is one bajra porridge recipe that we have put out. There's also a jawar porridge recipe that we have put out. And because these belong to these category, you will see that the first step that we are telling you to do is dry churn the jawar, dry churn the bajra, break them into smaller pieces when you dry churn, and of course like a coarse mixture, not like a fine powder, and then use that coarse mixture to make that khichdi and porridge. Because that is how you would essentially, commonsensically use wheat. You would, use it in a dalia form. You will not take wheat as it is and make a khichdi or a porridge out of it. But you use it in a dalia form just because you want to break it into smaller pieces. So that is how you can use them also. So this is one portion that I wanted to bring about. Of course, like you have a rice flour. जैसे हमारे पास चावल का आटा भी है. I'm talking about the paddy rice, the white rice. We have chawal ka aata. Similarly, you also have all of these millet rice ka aata bhi. It is not that you will not have. But again, as I said, it's always चावल को हम ज़्यादा अच्छे से ज़्यादा पसंद तब करते हैं when we steam it and have it and not in the form of roti, whereas these are more prevalent to see them more in the roti form. So of course you can try a lot of these things. I will say, if you are a beginner, if you're somebody who has not had millets, you're quite new, I will say start only with the millet rice first. And start with the millet rice and start with the very basic of just steaming these millet rice just the way you would do a normal white rice, and just have it with your dal, sambar, rasam, sabzi, chutney, papad, achar and all those things. And that is like the simplest way of having them, especially when you're new, because it's actually very easy to make it. Firstly, just taking millet rice, soaking it for 10-15 minutes, then just steaming it either in a cooker or in a pan, whatever you like it, and just having it with your lentils and sabzi and chutney and everything. So I think that's the simplest way to make it. That's the simplest way body can digest it also, because millet rice is taste wise also quite similar to our white rice. And a lot of people who have a lot of people who are trying millets for the first time, they actually like starting off with millet rice first. Then of course there are millet puffs, millet flakes, like how we have rice flakes. What are rice flakes? Poha. So जैसे हमारे पास rice flakes है, हमारे पास ये सारे millets का flakes भी है. जैसे हमारे पास ये मखाने होते हैं, the white lotus seeds, the fox nuts. In the same way, we have all of these puffs also, like a jawar puff. Even we have jawar flakes. In Maharashtra, we call it jawari ka laya, that is what we call it. So, of course, you have flakes, you have puffs, you have them in different forms. So, in those flakes and puffs, you don't even need any cooking for that matter. Like how you make a rice flakes ka chuda, that is how we make in Maharashtra. Even in Bengal, like you just give some tadka, peanuts, coconut, and you make a rice flakes ka chuda, it's a dry mixture. In the same way, you can use any of these millet rice flakes and make a chuda out of it. So it's so versatile that there's so many things that you can make out of it. somebody has just written that they made a millet dosa. Right now I saw it on the screen that somebody has made a millet dosa out of the millet rice, and the recipe is of course in the book, and very soon we are going to post one recipe reel also for the millet neer dosa. But that is again something very easy to make, and again something that you can easily make with any of the millet rice, simply because as I said, in the neer dosa you can replace your white rice with any of these millet rice. And in the millet rice also, within that, these 4 millet rice, you can always substitute, exchange between them. So if I show you, say, a foxtail millet neer dosa, you don't have to only stick to foxtail millet neer dosa. You can go ahead and make it a barnyard millet dosa, same recipe, no alteration, or a little millet neer dosa, or a proso millet neer dosa. So I think this solves a lot of questions for a lot of people, because when it comes to millets, there were so many questions. कि कैसे पकाना है, कैसे खाना है. So I think this quite solves the problem. A lot of people told me they don't know what is millet rice, they never heard of millet rice. So again, like I said, the reason is there why we have not heard of them, but you should include them. Of course, look at the heating and cooling millets category, which I explained on Thursday, because according to the weather wherever you are living, उसके अनुसार ही आपको इनको मिलेट्स को यूज करना है. सो व्हेन यू सपोज पिक एनी वन मिलेट राइस फॉर एग्जांपल फॉर कंजम्पशन, गो अहेड एंड चेक व्हाट इज the category in the book. Is it a heating millet or a cooling millet? And according to the weather, then you can take a decision. So I think this was a quite elaborate discussion on millets, but if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
What about oats? Can we eat oats for breakfast?
Yeah, oats is fine. I mean, as far as phase 1 and phase 2 is concerned, we are keeping gluten off only for phase 1 and phase 2. So oats is of course gluten free. So in that sense, if you're asking me, of course it applies for a gluten free grain. You can make a porridge out of it, you can have it for breakfast, that is also fine. But the other part is that, number one is that a lot of people eat instant oats, which is basically a highly nova ultra processed category of food. So if it's an instant oat, then you should not be taking that. That is number one. The other thing is, you should not be doing, see, oats is something that I receive a lot of questions from people who stay abroad, to be honest. And there I need to respond to them looking at their ease, looking at convenience, and looking at a lot of things. So if I have a NRI client who is asking me, I will say that okay, you can do it twice a week maybe. But if I have a client who lives very much in India, then I do feel that we have many options here. We also have domestic help more often than not. I would not say that it's always about ease for people in India. So what I'm trying to say is that oats is not something that is meant for Indians. Oats is a grain that came from Scotland, to be very, very the origin, and it was actually used for the horses out there. And people eat it if you want. It's a personal preference, but it's not something that I go out and promote, because I believe that you eat food which settles with you, which your forefathers have been eating, which your grandfathers have been eating, and oats certainly doesn't qualify for that. So even if it's a personal preference for taste, convenience, ease, whatever you want to call it, you can have it, but then just like twice a week maybe. But having said that, as I said, all of these millet rice, they are so simple and easy to make. You don't have to soak them for 6 hours, 7 hours. Just जितना time आपको oats porridge बनाने में लगेगा, उतना ही time आपको इनको बनाने में लगेगा. You can check out the recipe reels. It's all there in front of you. It doesn't take more than 20 minutes to make any of the millet porridge. So I will still say that go for the millet porridge. But if it's a personal preference, you can go ahead.
What to do with millet flakes?
Millet flakes, जैसे आप rice flakes को use करते हो, in similar way you can make a millet flake poha. You can, in phase 2, even take millet flakes, soak it in water, like how we do poha. We soak it little in water, right? उसको हम 10 मिनट के लिए थोड़ा सा पानी sprinkle करके छोड़ते हैं, and then we even mix it with curd and have. Dade da poha or something is like a Maharashtrian dish which a lot of Maharashtrian households make, which is nothing but poha with curd. Maybe they add some fruit or something, but maybe not. But basically it's just rice flakes and curd. So in the same way, you can do everything with these millet flakes. You can make a dry chuda, as I said, which is a dry mixture with nuts and coconut, everything. You can have them with curd, like I mentioned right now. You can even make the normal poha जो हम बनाते हैं तड़का देके हल्दी देके, so you can do that. So in every way that you use rice flakes, in the same way you can just substitute rice flakes with any of these millet rice flakes.
Rolled oats has been my breakfast for past 3 years in the US, but I have been eating idli, dosa, poha while I was in India. What easy breakfast alternative would you suggest?
Easy alternative breakfast is all there in my book, dear. So please go ahead. Chapter 10 has complete meal plans. There are so many easy breakfast names that is there in the meal plan. So there's a full diet chart. I'm not sure if you've picked up the book, but if you go to chapter 10, all the options for all the easy breakfast recipes are there. अगर किसी का recipe नहीं है, but at least the names you will find. So there are like at least 14 to 15 diet plans in the book, and all of them have breakfast options. So it's quite elaborate. So I'll say that you go ahead and look at that.
What is quinoa and what is your take on it?
It's the same. My take is the same. What I would say about oats. Quinoa is again, it's a gluten-free grain. Technically, if you would want to have it in phase 1, phase 2, you can have it. But then again, quinoa again, it's from South America. So people who live in US, maybe yes, they can go for a quinoa. Again, not more than twice a week or something, once a week. But for people in India, I don't see a reason why we need to go and eat quinoa. अगर आप US में रहते हो तो भी I will say that it is better off not doing quinoa, but it is still acceptable, I will say, because the more you stick to your food, your traditional food, to the foods that you have grown up eating, foods that your parents know about, the better you stay, the better health you have. So it's always about eating your traditional food more, but because we live in a world where we have everything around us, and especially, as I said, if you live in US, because quinoa comes from South America, so if you are living somewhere near over there, then maybe you can include it like once or twice in a week.
Millet grains are smaller compared to rice. Someone who takes 0.5 cups of rice cannot take 0.5 cups of millet. Is this true?
I didn't understand your question. You cannot, I have been substituting millets, millet rice. In fact, millet rice will also, like if you're talking about these, they all have their own sizes. So I don't think it will matter so much कि double बन जाएगा, recipe गड़बड़ हो जाएगी. If that is what you're asking, I don't think it will matter. Maybe here and there a little. थोड़ा बहुत आपका राइस अगर 1 कप बन रहा है तो हो सकता है ये 1 कप से कुछ माइन्यूटली कम या कुछ माइन्यूटली ज़्यादा बन जाए, बट ऐसा नहीं है कि कोई रेसिपी में आपने राइस यूज़ किया और आपने इससे सब्सटीट्यूट कर दिया तो वो डबल बन गया. आई डोंट थिंक सो, बिकॉज आई हैव बीन यूजिंग ऑल माई रेसिपीज substituting rice with millet rice, and I have not seen like a humongous difference that will need any discussion.
What is the ratio of water to cook millet dosa?
To cook millet dosa, so millet dosa is the recipe is there in the book, but millet dosa के लिए तो आपको millet you need to soak overnight, and then you need to grind it, you need to prepare a batter. So there is no cooking required over there. It's preparing a batter. If you're asking me how to make a steamed millet rice, then the ratio is 1:2, 1:3. A recipe reel is there in the book. We can even upload a millet knee dosa recipe reel very soon. The recipe is there in the book, in fact. So whatever quantity of water you might want to check, you can check over there. But as I said, in a millet knee dosa, you're just preparing a batter. You're soaking the millet overnight, grinding it with coconut and stuff, and preparing a batter, and then just pouring the batter over the pan. So there is no cooking that is there. Yeah. Okay. So somebody is asking, I'll take this as the last question. Nidhi Mohata, can I have jaw dalia in the evening post yoga? So jaw is barley. I hope you're asking about barley. Is it right, Nidhi? You can just text. But if you're asking about barley, then barley is, of course, you can have dalia in the evening post yoga. That is fine. So that is one thing. But if you're having, like you're asking about barley, then barley is a gluten grain. So barley is a grain that has gluten. And if you're following the 3-phase TBBD diet, then in phase 1 and phase 2, we don't do barley. We bring barley in phase 3. So if you are following the diet as given in the book, then you are going to have barley dalia, yes, after evening post yoga, fine, but you can have it from phase 3 onwards. And if you are asking about any other dalia, like I said, you can make a bajra dalia or any other porridge that is with millets, then of course you can have them in phase 1 and phase 2 in the evening post yoga. Okay, thank you so much. So yes, you Nidhi ka answer aaya hai yes. So yeah, okay. In Northeast, we have roasted rice powder with milk or dahi. Can it be taken at breakfast? Yes, but again, it depends on the phase. So if you go to my book, in chapter 10, I have these phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 meal plans for East as well. And आप देखेंगे कि वहाँ पे मैंने ये rice powder जो है, जो खोई भी लेते हैं वहाँ पे in East, you take, which is basically the Assamese jolpan that they say. I have mentioned about that as breakfast. So in phase 2, you can take this jolpan with curd, and in phase 3, you can take this khoi rice powder, whatever it is, you can take that with milk. So again, depending on the phase that you are in, you can go ahead with your traditional breakfast. Okay, thank you so much giving your time on a Sunday morning and joining me live, and I'm going to meet you tomorrow 6 p.m. on Instagram for our 10 weeks of Yuktahar project. Thank you.